Moving ahead, our next speaker personifies the fact the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. She is Dr. Himani Chaukar. She is the head of Department of Philosophy at Ramnaran Ruya Autonomous College, a certified philosophical consultant and logic-based therapy practitioner. She is the second person in India to get this certification. She's been also invited at the TEDx talk to speak about her research on the Aptani and Nishi tribes of Arunachal Pradesh. A recipient of Asiatic Society's Research Fellowship for Social Sciences and the youngest member of the committee formed by the government of Maharashtra for preparing the terminology encyclopedia in logic and philosophy. She has also conducted workshops on mindfulness and emotional well-being for the armed forces under the Ekam Sat Foundation. We are truly glad to welcome you, ma'am. Can we have Dr. Himani Chaukar with us, please?
Yes, I'm very much here. First of all, I would like to thank you all for inviting me here and giving me this platform, this opportunity to have a dialogue with you all. First of all, and again, before I start with my talk, I would like to congratulate my earlier speaker. It was really fascinating, very encouraging to hear him talk. All right, so today we are going to talk about my journey as a logic-based therapist and philosophical consultant. It's a very new field in India, though it has been practiced in the US and other European countries. But it is quite recent that in India we have introduced something like this. So get into this journey. So, when we talk about life, our life is full of issues and problems. There are so many uncertainties around us. Every day is full of uncertainties. But I'm sure of only one thing. And that one thing that each one of us here present today wants to lead a good life. I'm sure none of you would disagree with me when I say that you want to live a good life, a healthy, fulfilling, satisfying life, right? What exactly is a good life then? The subject philosophy has dealt a lot into this question, has delved into a lot into this question of how exactly we can lead a good life. Greek philosophers like Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, they have talked about a term known as eudaimonia. Now, eudaimonia is nothing but flourishing or happiness. And they feel that eudaimonia is the summum bonum of life, the ultimate goal of our life. Naturally, the question that comes to your mind right now is that, okay, how exactly then are we supposed to lead our good life? What exactly is the meaning of good life? So to put it in the most simplistic manner, I would say that a good life consists of minimizing pain and problems and maximizing pleasure and happiness, right? So how exactly are we going to do that? Human beings have been really clever. They have always tried finding out solutions for their problems. So if I have some physical ailment, physical problem, I go to a doctor who helps me to come out of it. If anyone has some kind of mental issues, there are mental health professionals who help us deal with those kind of problems and come out of it. But tell me, what about our daily life issues? A majority of problems are not exactly the ones which fall into either of these categories, right? We are not constantly ill physically, and we are not obviously ill mentally, or we do not have such serious mental health issues. Our majority of life, in fact, revolves around small little problems, daily life issues. For instance, relationship issues, marital issues, competition that you all have to face at every juncture of your life. Or let's say, for example, someone has lost someone near one. How to overcome that grief, how to deal with the loss of that loved one. These are the challenges that actually our life consists of. And here, my friends, philosophical consultation and logic-based therapy comes into picture. So me, as a logic-based therapist, and others who are trained into this field actually help to deal with all these kind of issues which pertain to your daily life. Now, when we talk about our daily life, there is a very nice term that has been used in the LBT terminology. LBT is a short form for logic-based therapy. So we call these as problems of living. Think about it for a while. These are all the problems which exist because we are alive. They are going to be a part and parcel of our life, come what may. So the best way to deal with them is naturally to take care of them, to deal with them at every juncture whenever they come into your life. Because, unfortunately, if these problems, though, let me remind you, though they seem very, very normal problems, they actually have a lot of potential to cause or to lead into major problems. If not taken care of at the right time, they have immense potential to themselves turn into big issues, big problems, where then you might have to take some other help, some other intervention will be needed, right? Let's look at a few examples, okay? And tell me, how do you relate to these examples? There's a person, Kavita. Kavita was working in an MNC, and during the lockdown in this entire pandemic, her company decided to shut down all their offices in India. And now Kavita is jobless, is unemployed, and naturally worried about her future. There is Pratik. Pratik is in 10th standard, and Pratik is really worried because his parents keep comparing him to his neighbor's child, who had scored 98% last year in the 10th standard. And Pratik is very, very worried that will he be able to really, live up to the expectations of his parents? What will happen if he disappoints them? Okay, there is Mr. Patankar, who is 40 years old, and he's in a nice company. He has a very well-paying job, but he's very passionate about photography. He keeps on clicking pictures, and he's really good at it. And he constantly keeps on thinking of quitting his job so that he can completely get into photography. But there is so much that he has to think about because he has a family to sustain. He has old parents whom he has to look after. He has housing loan. He has so many other things, other responsibilities that he has to take care of. And therefore, he's not very sure. He's not enjoying his job for sure, but he's not even ready to quit his job. Does this sound familiar to you all?
Yes, very familiar.
Right? Maybe, you might have actually met many Pratiks or many Kavitas like this in and, around you. What do these people do, or what should they do? Do you think that their problems are irrelevant? Do you feel that they don't need any, it's just a phase, chala jayega? Phase, it will get over, you will get back to your real life. There is no point in thinking about these things. Definitely not, right? Definitely not. Because these problems, though, again, they do not sound like, let's say, generalized anxiety disorder or depression. They are equally important issues. I will not call them as serious issues, but they are very much important. And as I said earlier, if at all these issues, these problems are not dealt with properly at the right time, they have a potential, they can themselves escalate to the level of becoming some serious issues. There lies the seed of bigger problem. So, the best way to deal with it would be trying to attack the problem at the very root of it, isn't it? So, before it grows into a tree, that seed grows into a tree, deal with that seed itself at that moment so that you don't have to look after that otherwise. And that is what logic-based therapy and philosophical consultation is all about. So, people have heard about psychologists, people have heard about psychiatrists who are mental health professionals, and they deal with some more serious kinds of issues. But, people always feel that, in sab choti cheezon ke liye, my parents are there. See, I have my friends whom I can call at 2 a.m. and they will still be there with me. I'm extremely glad that you all have such kind of friends and such kind of parents who are supportive. But again, one thing that we all are missing here is that they are not trained, right? They are not trained into this particular category of issues. They are not certified. And naturally, as a result, whatever suggestions will come from them will be coming from their own, limited perspective. So that is the reason why we need professionals who are trained to deal with such kind of issues to the best of their abilities. Okay, so now you must be really curious to there is no electricity here, so suddenly the internet connection
Yes,
was
ma'am.
lost.
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm not sure how much could you hear me. I think I had started talking about what LBT is. So let me get back from that point. So logic-based therapy, as I was saying, is a methodology of philosophical consultation developed by American philosopher Dr. Eliot Cohen, and his institute a certification into this, and with that certification anyone can practice, anyone who finishes that, of course, and for that you have some minimum qualifications, that is masters or PhD from philosophy, psychology, or any allied mental health area. So anyone with that certification can start his or her own practice of philosophical consultation or logic-based therapy. So logic-based therapy, in short known as LBT, is based on the premise that most of us disturb ourselves because of the faulty ways of thinking that we all have. Let me put it in other way. So we get into a lot of emotional loops. I'm sure you all are students, you all must be thinking about a lot of things. Are ye lockdown kab khatam hoga? Ye pandemic kab khatam hoga? When will we be able to meet each other? A lot of times you must have asked yourself a question like, why something happened to me? Have you ever got an answer to that? ये मेरे साथ ही क्यों होता है और ये मेरे साथ क्यों हुआ? There is no explanation for that. But that thought itself gives rise to a big emotional loop. Then you get into that loop and you cannot get out of that loop. So logic-based therapy believes that we create a lot of such kind of emotional loops around us. And this happens because there is a fault in our own thinking. There's a Stoic philosopher, there is a Greek philosopher called Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius's quote is very interesting. He says that if we get disturbed by something external, it generally is not because of the external condition or the situation or the problem, but because of the way we interpret it, the way we keep thinking about it. Think about it for a moment. Your estimate of the situation is what actually is bothersome, is problematic. It's not actually, may not be the situation itself, but the way we understand it, the way we interpret it. So now imagine, if that is the case, that our thinking itself commits a lot of fallacies, a lot of errors, what if we can rectify that? What if we can replace that faulty thinking with the logical thinking? Isn't that very, very obvious choice and a very obvious and simplistic method? That is the basic premise of LBT. See, it all sounds so logical and so simple, right? We ourselves are problematic. We ourselves make our problems huge. We think that they are really, pahad jaisa hai. But in fact, when we look at it carefully with the help of a consultant, we may realize that it actually is not really that big a problem, that big a issue. Right? So that is what LBT tries to do. Now, the next question that might come to your mind is that, okay, fine, this sounds quite exciting and interesting, but how is it different from psychological counseling, which is already in place? It's been there like since a long time. So how is this method different from psychological counseling? And is this method an alternative to psychological counseling? So let me make it very, very clear. This is not an alternative for psychological counseling. Okay. In logic-based therapy, Dr. Eliot Cohen, in one of his books, it's Logic-Based Therapy and Everyday Emotions, he has clearly jotted down the problems and issues that LBT professionals can take into account or that fall under the purview of LBT professionals. And all those issues or problems which are into the field of mental health, which do not come into the purview of logic-based therapy. Okay, so there is a clear-cut distinction between what exactly comes under it and what doesn't come under it. And that is for a very important reason. As I said initially, logic-based therapy is mainly about problems of living. Remember? The problems which are part and parcel of, because we are here, we are on this earth and we have to lead our lives, there are bound to be a lot of issues, but not so serious problems which fall under the purview of mental health issues. Okay, so for example, if I get a client comes to me who has depression, okay, who is in a higher state of depression, I'm not really the right person at that time to actually guide him. He needs some more help. He needs some different kind of help which can be offered by a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, depending again on the seriousness, the gravity of his issue. Okay, and accordingly I will have to refer him to a counselor, clinical psychologist, or a psychiatrist. But if a person comes to me with some kind of anxiety, some kind of issue, say for example, he has some moral dilemma that he is facing at the workplace, like ye karu ya na karu, will I, should I be doing this or that? I'm really confused, like how do I deal with my colleague? She constantly gets on my nerves. How do I deal with this situation? I want to be effectively dealing with this, because that constantly keeps me on the edge, that constantly keeps me irritated. So how do I deal with it effectively? That is definitely something that I can help him or her with. Okay, so there is a clear-cut distinction between what problems come under logic-based therapy or philosophical consultation. And as I said, if you look at your life objectively, you will realize that 80% of our life actually revolves around these problems only. It's not really any, major serious issue. Thankfully so, right? So that is the answer to your question. How is it different from psychological counseling, or is it an alternative to psychological counseling? It's not. Now, the next question you may have in mind, is that, okay, fine, then how exactly it is done? What is the process that is involved in logic-based therapy? How do we go about bringing that person back from the problem, or giving him directions for his problem? So logic-based therapy achieves this with the help of a 6-step process. So there are 6 steps involved. The very first step obviously is where we try and identify the emotional reasoning of the other person. Imagine you come to me with a problem. So first thing, obviously, I'll have to do is understand what you all are saying, or, what exactly is the issue that you are facing. Why are you facing that issue? So, trying to dig deeper into your problem and understanding why is it that you feel that particular situation is problematic. Okay. Second step is very tricky even for us as practitioners, where we need to find out the fallacious reasoning. Remember, I told you thinking commits different kinds of fallacies, different kinds of errors. So we need to locate those errors. So LBT identifies 11 such fallacies that are general thinking commits. Interesting, right? 11 fallacies that we commit without even realizing that, oh, we are doing this. Oh, I'm actually, thinking in a wrong manner. So we need to, second step is we need to identify what exactly are those fallacies that you're committing or your thinking is committing. Third step obviously would be to refute the fallacious reasoning. So, if you are thinking in a wrong manner, I will have to tell you how and where exactly the problem lies, where exactly the fault lies. So we actually many times have to write it down on the paper so that it becomes very much visible to the client that, okay, see, this is where you are committing a mistake. This is where your thinking is committing a mistake. And again, let me tell you all that this is not to say that you are wrong. Tumhari wajah se. It's not like that. It's rather saying, showing, it's like showing a mirror. See, this is where, something has gone wrong. It's as simple as that. Every one of us is bound to make such errors. So you have not done something really, a grave mistake. It's just simple that, okay, here itself, here is it, here lies your fault or thinking, problematic thinking. Next step is a lot more important than all the earlier ones. Have you heard of this Marathi saying, "Kalta pan vadat nahi"? Those of you who are Maharashtrian, I'm sure you all have already understood. I can see you all smiling. So, a lot of times, kalna or understanding is not really a problem. The problem is in implementation, right? So, if with the help of LBT first 3 steps, it's like, I'm giving you a clear spectacles. Your spectacles were colored and because of which you were seeing things in a different manner. So now I give you a proper numbered spectacles, you will be able to see the world clearly, right? You will be able to look at your problem from a new light, from a new lens. Now, while doing that, there may be some people who may say, nahi, pehle wala hi acha tha. Are you getting it? So, pehle wala hi acha tha because I'm used to that kind of a thinking pattern. So you have to, okay, someone's mic is on. Okay, all right. So, there at that time, you will have to make sure that you tell your client certain things by way of which he will understand the solution that you are providing, or rather the new look, new perspective that you are giving him stays with him. Like, he understands it and he tries to follow it. So here comes another very interesting concept of LBT, which is known as philosophical antidotes. So philosophical antidotes are potent doses, and these potent doses come from the philosophers' ideas, from the ancient times, say, for example, from Buddha or Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, or even modern thinkers in Indian as well as Western thinkers, who have pondered over these issues a lot, who have actually written so much about life, existence, and existential issues. So the wisdom from all their insights is put together in a capsule format and is given to the client, metaphorically speaking. So that is what is known as philosophical antidote. So whatever you are suggesting, the new spectacles that you have given the other person to wear, in order that he stays with those, he wears them constantly, you have to give him some philosophy which he will be able to relate to. So, say, for example, if you have a problem that, I'm getting too much attached to the goal that I have set for myself. And if I don't achieve that goal, I think my life to puri barbad ho gayi. Getting too much attached to a particular goal that you have set. Now here, being an Indian, I can give you a philosophical antidote in the form of teachings from Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure you all have heard about Bhagavad Gita, and you all have heard about the concept called as Nishkama Karma, right? Not thinking too much about the fruits, but rather concentrating on the action. One of the Stoic philosopher again says that think about the things that are in your control and do not think about the things which are not in your control. So simple, right? What is the point in thinking about things which are not in your control? As it is, you are not going to be able to do anything about it. So might as well invest your energy in thinking about the things which are in your hand, right? And that is your action. So I can give you some philosophy that you will be able to relate to, philosophical antidote that the client will be able to relate to and then apply, will be willing to apply in his own life. And the last step, which makes LBT the most interesting therapy, is that it doesn't leave the client hanging there. It's not like, okay, मैंने तुमको ये सब बोल दिया, now everything is up to you, बाबा. मेरा काम तो हो गया, अभी तुमको जो करना है वो तुम देखो. It doesn't leave the client like this. The sixth and the most important step in this whole process is preparing a behavioral plan for your client. So, we don't leave it there. We actually, with the help of whatever we have, whatever discussion I might have had with my client, I prepare a kind of plan of implementation, behavioral plan, which he or she will be applying in his life, on which he will be working. And then he can get back to me after a week or 2 weeks, depending on what kind of assignments I have given him or her. So based on how is the experience of him implementing all of those things in his real life, the next session will be carried out. Okay, so that's the most, I always have felt that's the most interesting thing in this therapy. So it's not just talking, but some action. Otherwise it's very easy to talk, right? It's not my problem. So very easy, I can go on talking about it. But I have to really be with the client in suggesting him how exactly he can implement it. So कळतंय पण वळत नाही. वळवण्यासाठी जे काही पाहिजे त्याच्यासाठी सुद्धा. So you have to be there for that as well. So it takes care of the person as a whole rather than just being on one side of the table. So LBT believes that this entire relationship between the client and the consultant is a very organic one. It has to be a very organic one, and then only it can really be very effective and useful. So far, whatever number of clients that I have had definitely have felt that the philosophical antidotes that I have given them, of course, not my wisdom, but wisdom from antiquity, that has really helped them to deal with those issues and problems more effectively. So, ultimately, what is more important is to deal with those issues. As I have constantly been saying, that dealing with those issues is important, because otherwise, you never know. You may feel that they have been repressed, they have been suppressed. They are no longer there. हाँ, हमने तो back burner पे रख दिया है. But you just don't know when and where and in what form they might just come up on the surface. And you don't want that, because that will definitely be much more problematic than how it is right now. Okay, so in order to make sure that such problems do not take out the potency of that problem there and then, so that there is nothing that you have to worry about in the future. So I always believe that being a human, having problems or having a lot of issues is absolutely being human. No problem about it. But a wise person, a wise man is the one who wants to deal with those problems rather than keeping them on back burner. And when we talk about dealing with the problems, a wise person is the one who knows that this is the right time to look at the problem, to deal with the problem. And he also knows who are the right people from whom they can ask for guidance. And they also know that taking help is not something bad. Taking help is absolutely fine. It's fine to have a problem, and it's absolutely fine to ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help. And fortunately, there are people in different areas who are actually there, sitting there just for you all to, to deal with your problems together. So I think with this, I would like to say that I hope we all do not keep our problems on back burner. We try and deal with them at the right time from the right people, and we all lead a good eudaimonic life. Thank you so much.